and welcome to Briar Haus Writes. I'm Becky Parker, and today it is my honor to be able to have with us flash fiction writer extraordinaire, Miss Kathy Fish. Kathy, welcome to our program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Kathy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, that's a good open question. I guess, as for my writing life, began a little late when I was in my early 40s. Um, but I grew up in the Midwest, huge family, seven brothers, just a working class family, in a sort of a factory blue collar town. And I always think about how much I love to read and how much growing up with seven brothers made me want to escape sometimes. And so we had a Carnegie Library 3 blocks from home.
Oh, wow.
I'd go to the library, read, 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 read. Even as a child, I wrote. I think that's a common thing for writers to say that they started writing little stories of their own as a child. But then I didn't really take it seriously as something that I would do for my life. So, I went through life, got married, went to college, got married, had children, lived in Australia for a few years. And then when I was about 39, just for fun, I took a writing class, a workshop that was in Sydney. We were in Australia at that time. So I'd take the train into Sydney and take this workshop, and it was like falling in love because I hadn't been really writing anything but letters to folks back home in those days pre, email and pre-internet. Uh, and I just fell in love. And from there, everything just took off. And I've been writing and teaching pretty much ever since. So now I live in Colorado, and the kids are all grown. And yeah, it's kind of exciting new part of my life is now that I'm really away from the mothering part of it, as Mother's Day was yesterday. I'm thinking of that, and more into just like pursuing my own projects and things. It's really exciting.
What typical topics draw your interest?
And that's why I was telling you about my background of growing up. So I'm very interested in sibling relationships, blue collar, Midwestern kind of themes, things like that. I draw on my childhood and growing up quite a bit. I'm really interested in people who are sort of in conflict with themselves, their sort of inner struggles, um, those types of things. I think, as a woman, it's always you get into womanhood, um, you know, uh, feminism, things like that, that sort of not directly approached, but through the stories, there's that feminist aspect. I feel like growing up with seven brothers, I had kind of a unique education into the minds of men and boys, and how that all works. So yeah, some of those are themes like that. And then lately, I'm getting more into an experimental bent with my writing, so enjoying that quite a bit as well.
And when you say experimental, can you elaborate on what you mean?
So lately, with flash fiction, especially, I think that we are given so few words to work with, right? So little space. But we still want to, as flash writers, we still want to convey those big stories, right? We still want to say the big things. We still want to make the big impact. We have so much less space. So I really look to the poets for their tools that they use. And I've been lately just playing around with form and structure. So I would say quite a bit of the flash that I've been writing the last year or two has really gone in away from very, very traditional, um, you know, paragraph and beginning, middle, end, and all those things that we adhere to as flash writers because we think of ourselves as writers of small stories.
Mhm.
I'm moving away from that and more into playing with structure, having things that are closer to a prose poem. I had a piece recently that has only slash marks and no other punctuation
Oh,
or capitalization. I had a piece that was in matchbook literary that's all one syllable words. So that was challenging. So that
yeah.
piece has a very staccato feel to it. Just very, very set out in these one syllable words. And I think that these are ways that flash writers, if you're really playing with form or how the piece looks on the page, you do a lot with conveying a felt experience for the reader in a way that you couldn't if you had, I mean, if you don't have 5,000 words or 10,000 words, you're using the structure, the form, the look of the piece to convey another layer that's not verbal. It's more, I guess, more intuitive or more subconscious.
Do any of your stories, when you write them, Kathy, do you ever think this is going to be my first one, and then maybe I'm going to write a sequel to, and let the characters continue? Or when you write a story, are you completely finished with that story?
I think for the most part, I'm completely finished. I know when I go to put together a collection that I will see when I'm laying out the stories on my dining room table printed out and I'm looking from story to story. I'll see those continuities. I'll see, oh, this seems almost like the same character, or this seems like the same setting, and I will see that. But there's no conscious going, okay, I want to continue with this person. I want to continue with this story. Um, I think it would be very easy if I wanted to pull together a connected collection to do that, to like alter the pieces slightly to make them fit into that. But
Mhm.
no, I don't. Usually I feel like I'm done when I finish a story with that particular idea or character.
When you're writing, do you ever find any challenges that you face with, maybe character setting or any kind of research that you do? And if so, how are you overcoming those to get a finished product?
Yeah. Well, so. I don't I don't necessarily practice what I preach. So when I'm teaching, I'm saying, "Oh, just trust yourself, let everything in, do this, do that." Which is great to say and it's great advice to follow, but I don't always follow it for myself. So I think my biggest challenge as a writer is getting in my own way. So I, I will question myself as I'm writing. I will question, why are you doing this? This is kind of, no editor is going to want this. This has been done before, or this is too strange, or whatever. Um, One of the things that I found in my writing to overcome, as you're asking, is that if I take the piece and I'm struggling with it and I've gotten maybe halfway through or whatever, the way to kind of trick myself out of that mindset is to say, okay, now what do I do? Why don't I pull this apart on the page? So say I've written as a breathless paragraph, one paragraph of text, and I'm going at it breathlessly and I'm stuck. One thing will do is then take the document on my computer and pull it apart and have it be sentence, white space, sentence, white space, like that.
Right.
And so often just looking at it visually in a different way gets me out of that mode. And I see something different and I feel encouraged to go back in and do it. And sometimes I'll keep it with that in that structure. I had a story a few years ago. It was in Waxwing. I can't remember what the name of it was, but that is exactly what happened is I had a breathless paragraph. I was stuck. I pulled it apart and then I liked it pulled apart. So I kept that. And just the opposite, if I have a very pulled apart piece with lots of white space, I'll turn that around and I'll chunk it up into a paragraph and see it differently. It will feel different. And I think structure really does a lot in Flash for conveying that felt experience. So what I have to do is just show it back to myself in a different way,
Mhm.
and something for me clicks, and I will feel energized, re-energized. I'll see something new and I'll get back into it. And similarly, I may change the tense from past to present, or I may change third person to first person or vice versa. Just kind of taking a, a really new approach with the draft in progress will open things up for me and it'll get me going. But yeah, getting out of my own way is probably my biggest challenge as a writer. And I'm sure that's true of a lot of writers.
Well, do you ever, when you are writing a story, do you ever have a story? Because you've written several and you've been published in many anthologies. Do you ever have a flash story that you actually absolutely found as your favorite? Like in your mind, it became one that you actually, you loved, and you were so glad that you wrote it. And if so, why? And what do you like about that story?
Gosh, that's such a good question. Um, you know, some of my older stories have, interestingly, I still love some of my older stories. A lot of them don't love. I did write a story called The Hollow, which was published in Denver Quarterly. What I love about that story, and maybe this is coloring my love for this story, but it was one of those rare gift experiences where I went someplace to write. I think it was Barnes and Noble, had headphones on, sat down, looked around at the people milling about. It was a busy day, it was like a Saturday. And then somehow I just began writing and I wrote the whole thing from beginning to end. It was about an 800 or 900 word story. And it just came out and it flowed. And I just felt so immersed in the piece. I liked the writing. I liked the voice. Everything clicked. And then I made almost no changes to it and sent it out to Quarterly, and it was accepted. So I love that story. And I wonder if that's the reason, is that it was so quickly successful for me. I didn't struggle over it, right?
Hmm.
And then there's stories more that I struggled with, but came to a place that I liked. Oh, I just remembered the name of the story in Waxwing. It was called Unfettered and Alive. That's another one that I like, and that's the one I was telling you that was in a block paragraph, and I couldn't get it to work, and then I pulled it apart as a Word document on my computer, and then seeing it with white space in between, it felt differently. So that was a piece I actually struggled with, but in the end, I ended up liking it quite a bit too. And again, I guess what would be sort of a commonality between those two stories is that I was able to capture a voice and a tone. And I feel like those are so important for Flash, especially for any short story, novel, anything. But the ability to capture a voice and then to carry it through from beginning to end and have it work. So that's a favorite. Another piece of mine that I wrote that is a favorite because I was able to channel strong feelings fairly successfully into a piece. It was my piece, Collective Nouns for Humans in the Wild. So that's a piece that I wrote. There had been this terrible time of lots of mass shootings. It's still a problem, but there was this terrible period where there were quite a few of them. And the Las Vegas shooting had just happened in 2017 in October.
Hmm.
And devastating. The news of that was devastating. And each one was more devastating than the one before. But I had been asked by the editor to do a piece for their second anniversary. And I had a piece queued up. It was ready to be published. And I was thinking about this mass shooting, and I had sat down and I started to try to write my way into it. And I was writing really, you know, felt like overwritten or just, going into violence too much. And I hate violence. And I was struggling. And then I started to just play with this idea of collective nouns and doing it for human beings instead of animals.
Mhm.
And that was, I had found the way in. I had found the way to tell it slant. I started messing with these collective nouns for people because I thought of all the people, the various kinds of people who die in mass shootings. It's people living their normal lives, people having, being happy and doing what they want. So I kept kind of playing with that, and I got to the idea of a shooting victim being a target for a shooter. And then it just came together. So that was a piece, I think it looks like a poem. It's maybe 100 and some words, I'm not sure. But that's a piece that conveyed directly how I felt without using the word gun, without invoking violence, without any blood. I've seen stories and pieces written about mass shootings, and they're wonderful, but almost all of them really do capitalize on this idea of the blood and the death and the shooting and all that and the
Mhm.
guns. And I didn't want to do that. So I think that's a favorite of mine because I was able to convey what I wanted to convey. I was able to go deep into something without sort of bringing more violence into the world with my words. And that piece was very successful. So that's one. So I guess those are three that are some of my favorites of my own.
And what would you want your reader to have taken away from that particular poem?
The response to that piece was very strong. And um, I think the reason it was strong is because it was sort of, for me and for the readers, it was sort of an aha moment, like,
Hmm.
oh, that's right. Sort of looking at victims of mass shootings as targets. And then to end, the last line is that a group of school children is a target. I think that was just like that click, that aha, and and that the piece didn't start with that. The piece pulled the reader along just sort of almost playfully with this idea, and then came to that. So um, yeah, I think that's what the impact of that was, is why it was shared so much and sort of went viral. And that piece has been anthologized quite a number of times now. It was just one of those things where you write and it actually clicks with a lot of
Hmm.
people. Yeah.
Right. Um, what would be, Kathy, if you could describe your ideal reader, who would that be? How would they respond to your work?
Oh, I love that. Well, so I guess my flash fiction and flash fiction in general tends to rely quite a bit on the intelligence of the reader and the intuitive and empathetic parts of readers because we flash writers can't spell it all out. We can't spend a lot of time, setting the scene or creating, this tone or this background and really, taking the reader by the hand step by step. We can't do that.
Correct.
So flash fiction tends to like you're right in there. There's white space, there's nuance, there's subtext. And so for me, my ideal reader is someone who is a very good reader, first of all, like a person who brings themselves to the piece, right? So a very good reader is able to sort of collaborate with the writer, right? Because they're also getting into, okay, not everything's here, but I'm going to bring my own thoughts into this, and I am intelligent and intuitive enough to make those connections that the writer is probably needing me to make.
Kathy, you are currently the writer in residence at Jack Kerouac House in Orlando. How did this come about?
Oh, it's just so exciting. So, I had seen the ad. I think Pribble, who is the editor at Ghost Parachute magazine, he's part of the board of Kerouac House, and I saw an ad on Facebook for this opportunity. And actually, before that, I had read many blog posts um, by Shasta Grant and Joy Baglio, who were previous residents at Kerouac House, and thought, well, what an experience, how exciting, and saw their pictures and their blog posts. Well, so then I just decided I would do it. It's a 7 week residency, so not everybody can do it because you have to leave your life for 7 weeks. But here I am, a person who, works at home, works, for myself, and no children at home anymore. So I applied and got into it. Wonderful opportunity, actually. I'm not there right now, but it was fantastic. You're right in this little house that Jack Kerouac lived in Orlando, Florida, for this period of time while he was writing Dharma Bums.
Mhm.
And he lived with his mother there and to the back side of the house. And it's full of memorabilia. It's full of pictures, typewriters that Kerouac used, or the types of typewriters he used. Uh, Deeply, deeply inspiring space to be in on your own and just dedicated to your craft and your art for 7 weeks. So really great. I recommend it to anyone.
And what came out as a result of that? What kind of creative work came out?
So I had started a collection, sort of. I got into a theme, which is something I rarely do. And you asked earlier about connected stories. So this collection is actually going to be an example of that
Oh,
when it comes
good.
to full fruition. I had become very, very interested in uh, some things drawn from my own life. Um, one of which is a particular way that I have been that I don't remember with much clarity things from my childhood. And my brother, who's just older than I am, has an almost photographic memory of our childhoods. So whenever I'm talking to him, I ask him lots of questions and write down things because he's so good.
Mhm.
Um, so anything like there's other aspects from my real life to do with brains, memory, the passage of time, and how the passage of time feels strange, like how as you get older, time speeds up, they say, and
Right.
the feeling of it does. When you're a child, it's longer. Just these sort of things are just fascinating for me. And I do have a background before I was a writer in neuropsychology. So I have some of that passion for that material in that area of science. So I started writing these pieces, and I had mentioned to you about how my pieces have become more experimental.
Hmm.
So part of the reason for writing more experimentally is my attempt to capture on the page how my own mind actually works when I'm remembering something. So the story that I mentioned it was called Procession, and it was in Swamp Pink. It's just it's just broken off. It's just phrases broken off with slash marks and going into a memory. So part of that, yeah, I'm trying to convey this sort of nebulous, weird, dreamy material as it actually feels onto the page, and very economically. So these are pieces that I started with numerous pieces that I already had, and then at Kerouac House I expanded on those and wrote some more material. Did a bit of research while I was there as well. So it was a great use of my time.
Did you get out and see the beach or any kind of like, did that help you being out in that environment?
So I never got to the beach, but the neighborhood, that particular neighborhood in Orlando, there's a beautiful, beautiful lake, and the neighborhood itself has just tall trees, these live oaks, the Spanish moss, very quiet, beautiful neighborhood. So I every day I would walk, it was about 10 minutes, and I'd walk to this lake, and there was a bench, on the side of the lake, and I would go there. And I would take a notebook, but more often than not, I just let myself go into this, you know, reverie almost of just the stillness of it. Um,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have my phone with me. I didn't want to connect to the internet. I just wanted to just I think there's a term that's called soft fascination. And it's sort of ties into the idea of your brain is not actively seeking stimulation, right?
Hmm.
You're letting stimulation sort of go past you in a soft way. So you're not directed to, I was never directed to watching a documentary or listening to a podcast or reading a book or any of that stuff. I was just letting. And it was so perfect for my creativity to just have every day this sort of hour or so just letting. And then I would go back to Kerouac House and sit down, at my laptop or my notebook and just get to work. And I think that was, I mean, and that's something you don't have to go on a residency to do, truly. But it was good to be away from my life and my work and things like that, to just give myself that time to really let my brain just go where it wanted to go. I just have my two books in front of me. So these two books, this one was published in 2018. So these two books really represent old work at this point, in none of my newer publications. But it's kind of fun sometimes to go back and read. I'll read this one. It's called Disassembly. And this was published in Guernica. Let's see. Sure. This was published in Guernica, and it's sort of based a little bit on when my father died, but it's fiction. But I drew on some of that imagery, and again back to the Midwest stuff, and it's one of my favorites. Disassembly. I'm sidled up to the bar at the Knights of Columbus Hall. It's 11 in the morning on New Year's Eve, and we've just buried my dad. I asked the bartender to splash some more rum into my drink. I call him barkeep, like we're in a saloon. I'm the only one here drinking, but I'm doing it for my dad. He insisted there be an open bar. I've been sitting right over here trying to figure it out, the woman says. The paper said he had 7 sons and 1 daughter, and I said to myself, I have got to see this poor girl. She's short and squat, bedecked with a dozen or so necklaces and gold and silver chains. Her bosom stands between us like a very large Christmas present. It's Joy, right? The unmarried one? With effort, I focus, but she's juddering like an old film reel. My name is Barbara Lee, she says. She looks at my right hand, the one holding the highball glass, and brushes crumbs from the corner of her mouth. I didn't know your father at all. I just like coming to these things. She appraises my clothes. I dress like a communist. A small male relative in a three-piece suit has been running rings around the buffet table. Now he's changed course and seems intent on tackling me. I step aside just in time, and he barrels right into a loaded coat rack and is boomeranged back a few feet, landing on his back. Wailing ensues. My nephew comes harumphing up, apologizing, lifting the kid to his feet. I press my palm to my aching head. Barbara Lee is still yammering. On the other side of the hall, my oldest brother climbs up on a platform and waves his arms, calling out to the rest of us, the siblings, for a photo. It's because of me, the sister, the one who moves so far away, that we have to do this when we can, even in a maybe especially if someone has died. Say, where'd you get those necklaces? I ask. I want some. Walgreens, they're on sale. Will you take me? The barkeep pours the rest of my drink into a styrofoam cup and tops it up. Barbara Lee helps thread my arms through the sleeves of my coat. She drives a vintage VW Bug. Riding along with my shoulder practically touching a stranger's, I feel like someone who's been given a day pass. Do you want to talk? She says. You know, about your loss? Nope. Oh, that's a relief. She starts singing along to the song on the radio. It's an old Supreme song. You know, this is just what I needed, she says. Maybe it's weird, but I'm happy. I'm just sort of happy, I tell her. The Walgreens is dilapidated and post-apocalyptic. Bins of discounted Christmas decorations and candy and gift sets ugly up the aisles. I keep my sunglasses on. Barbara Lee hustles ahead and I sip my rum and coke through a straw. I start to shiver again the way I did at the cemetery, as if I'm being disassembled. I catch up to her in aisle 10. The bin of tangled necklaces resembles a snake pit. She extricates several and loops them over my head. I feel them there against my chest, lending me weight and substance and possible sparkle. These aren't really me, I say. Are you kidding? She says, these are everyone. We find a mirror in the cosmetics aisle. Barbara Lee peers into it with me, and all I can focus on is her round face, now registering vague disapproval. Back at the Knights of Columbus, my brothers have probably stopped wondering what happened to me. Maybe the thing is over by now. They have gathered up all the pictures and mementos of our dad's life and hauled them away. I take off the necklaces and hand them back to her. I should get back. I buy some Excedrin and she buys a Snickers and a marshmallow Santa, and we sit in the car while she eats them. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, she says. It was a hoot. She starts the car and there's more old Motown playing on the radio. She cranks the volume and I adjust the seat until I'm practically lying down. Barbara Lee and I sing along with Aretha in loud and fantastically off-pitched voices. My brothers insist that I stand right in the center for all our family photos. It is our custom. And one of them will say, "A rose among thorns," and another will forget to put down his can of bud. There's a very old photo of all of us scrunched together on the couch, the bare and dirty feet of the youngest ones sticking out of the camera. I'm the baby sitting on my oldest brother's lap, arms outstretched like ta-da. That's the end. Thank you.
That was such a complex story. And you infused it with some humor and just some really amazing work. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kathy, tell us about your fast flash workshops and your retreats that you began back in 2015.
Yeah. So, thanks for asking that. For a long time, I was putting things up on my website, sort of like blog post sorts of things. And I kept being asked, or it kept being suggested to me by my friends, you should teach classes. I wish you would teach classes. And all through my life, I've been a person who has to be just goaded into doing things. I'm not, this energetic person. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So finally, what happened was I had an opportunity to teach for an MFA program. It's the Mile High MFA program at Regis University in Denver. And I was
Nice.
asked to do that. And so I was very honored to do that as a faculty mentor. And I thought, God, have no experience. So I thought, okay, I have a few months before I start teaching for this program. I'm going to do I'm going to teach a few classes myself, just to teach myself. So I started the Fast Flash workshops, and they were online, asynchronous workshops that I would do on like a WordPress website. So I did some weekend classes with that, and they just, for whatever reason, they just took off in popularity. And after a couple of classes, the word of mouth kicked in, and I um, announced registration, it was going to be taking place on my website, and my website immediately crashed. I said, I open, registrations at such and such time on such and such date, and it crashed because there were so many people, I guess, poised and ready to sign up that it just crashed. So then I really they would sell out so quickly that I did a lottery kind of system for the classes, and they were just I don't know. They were just so popular and I enjoyed teaching them. But now I've moved away I've taught for 6 years for the MFA program and I mostly moved away from the weekend classes. And now I do 90-minute sort of Zoom-like type classes. And those are tons of fun and very, very energetic and people are very enthused and engaged. And so that's primarily what I'm doing now. And then the retreats. I had started running retreats with Nancy Stolman, another fantastic Colorado writer and editor, and we started doing those internationally, and we were just getting those going, and then COVID happened. So we had one all set up for France, and we had to they shut down the place, the venue shut down, so we had to stop that. So we kind of made it through COVID and got back into it. But it was taking the running of these and the administration was taking too much of my time. So I stepped back from that. I'm still, going to them and teaching for them. I'm just not creating them. So the next one is in Grand Lake here in Colorado and that's in August. And I've been doing other retreats. I'm doing a retreat in West Virginia for Ellen Weirin, who's started doing those. I like those. It's really fun to be in person.
Mhm.
The other thing, not a retreat, is the Flash Fiction Festival that is held every year in England.
Oh.
Jude Higgins runs those. And that's just, all these people convene in Bristol, England, and it's 3 days of just flash fiction, great teachers, great workshops, lots of fun. So, yeah, so that's where I'm at teaching wise right now.
How do people register for those different events? Is there a website that you can tell everyone about?
Um, so I usually announce all my classes and retreats and things on my Substack newsletter. There's both a free version of that and a paid version of that, but I always put up the links for that. I'm also on Blue Sky, I'm on Facebook. I'm no longer on Twitter, but I get the word out quite well, and I announce those ahead of time. So what I'll do 2 or 3 times a year is have a registration, a main registration. I'll announce all the upcoming workshops and people can register from there. And that's where I get the bulk of it is when I announce usually July or August and then maybe October, September, announce a new group. And that's how most of them come through. But I'm always announcing, I'm always reminding people about classes on my Substack or on social media. So
And I believe I read this that the newsletter that you launched, The Art of Flash Fiction, on New Year's Eve in 2020 has attained the number 7 spot in fiction. So,
yeah,
congratulations on that.
yeah,
That's pretty
thank you.
amazing.
It's a Substack bestseller. And I'm really proud of it. Now I have over 9,200 subscribers for that. And it's something I thoroughly enjoy. And if people are paid subscribers to that, I do these events. I do like immersion events. So the last one we did went for 2 weeks. This upcoming one between mid-June to mid-July will last a month, and it's every single day for a month. I will post craft stuff, prompts, and then people can post their writing in response to the prompts, and everybody reads each other's and gives feedback, and
Wow.
it's so fun and so energetic. And I think the first one I did got over 400 new flashes were written, and quite a number of those went on to be published. So that if you're a or if you're a paid subscriber, you get to take part in that for free, and it's so much fun. Yeah, so I really enjoy the Substack.
How does it feel when you see people that you have mentored going on and getting their own work published? What kind of feeling does that give you?
It's amazing, and I think there's quite a few people now that are teaching online classes, and I think we all will say the same thing. When you find out that, somebody announces, "Oh, I got a shortlisted," or "I won a thing," or my first published thing started in Kathy Fish's class or someone else's class," it is such a great feeling. You just, you just feel like you've given birth to something in a way, especially for the people that, you catch early on in their writing.
Hmm.
And there's quite a few of those that that were in my classes back in 2015, and now they've got books written, and they're just doing great. And yeah, exactly. It's such a wonderful, gratifying feeling.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for taking the time with us today at Briar Haus Writes. You are such an incredibly faceted woman who can come up with some amazing things. So I wish you all the best in your
Thank
future.
you. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you today.